5 in the morning. Noah Pike was asleep sitting up on a bus shelter bench. 24, 12 hours a night in a security booth, 5 nights a week. The bus came round the roundabout, and the noise woke him. He stood up, 1 step toward the curb, and something opened in the air beside his head. Steps today 1, rate $1 a step, balance $1. He did not get to react. The bus was already pulling in. He got on, paid, and sat at the back with it still hanging there. 4 miles, the number did not move, so it was not distance. He stood up and walked to the front of the bus and back. 14 steps, $14. The driver watched him in the mirror and said nothing. 1 step, $1. His legs only, the bus did not count. At the 3rd stop, he checked his bank. He had been $11 overdrawn the night before. He was now $140 in credit. That was when it stopped being a hallucination and started being a problem. This is the job. Watch a gate that nothing comes through for $11 an hour. He took it because it was the only one that let him sit down for all of it. At 19, a man drove 90 miles to watch him run. The knee went in the 11th minute. 2 operations, neither took. The second cost $41,000 he did not have. $600 a month out, $1,900 in. He has never said the number out loud to anyone. That night he did the walk round twice instead of once, and watched the number climb. By 7 he had 4,300, and the panel showed him something new. A daily goal, 10,000 steps, clear it and the rate doubles, miss a day and it resets. He spent that day testing it in one room, the way you test a wire you think might be live. Stepping on the spot in a kitchen counted. That was the important one. Standing still did not. Shifting his weight did not. It wanted a step and it could tell. He pushed himself across the carpet on a chair, felt stupid and earned nothing. By afternoon it came to 2 lines. Every step his own legs took anywhere. Nothing when something else did the moving. Which meant there was no ceiling anywhere in it. No weather, no closing time, only him. He had 3,000 steps. It was 4 in the afternoon, and he had been awake for 22 hours. And the knee, after 2 walk rounds and a bus aisle, was already swollen tight. He owed $41,000, and had just been shown that one day was the difference between $1 and 2. He looked at the letters for about 10 seconds, and then he put his trainers on. There is a gym under the block that never closes. He had paid for it for 2 years without going once. He joined it 11 days after the second operation. The way people buy things to prove a plan exists. He got on the end one and set it to a walk. The number moved exactly as fast as it had on the road. A road, a yard, a bus aisle, a belt in a basement. It only cared that his legs did it. He cleared 10,000 before 8, and the rate went to $2, and he did not get off. $10,000 in a day, from a machine he was already paying for. And underneath it the next goal, 20,000, $5 a step. The goal doubles every time. The machine does not get tired, he does. He worked that out around 14,000 and kept walking. At $2 a step his whole debt was 20,500 steps. He could be clear of it before midnight. At 16,000 the knee stopped hurting, which is much worse than hurting. At 18 he could not feel his right foot land, and was placing it by watching the mirror. At 19,200 the leg stopped taking instructions, and he went off the back of the belt. $19,000 in a panel only he could see, and he could not stand up. It took him 20 minutes to reach the door, mostly on his hands. He stopped being conscious at 1 in the morning, on the floor, still dressed. He woke the next afternoon and could not put his right foot on the floor. The joint was hot and tight and shining, and he had no comparison for the size of it. At midnight, having taken no steps at all, the rate went back to $1. $19,000, a leg he could not stand on, and a rate back at 1. He earned more in a day than in the previous 10 months, and paid for it with the only part of himself he could not replace. It was 9 days before he could walk to the shop. What he thought about was not the money. It was that the panel had let him do it. No warning, no limit, no line that said stop. It would have kept paying while he crawled. It was not a gift. It was a market, and he was both sides of it. On the 10th day, he went out at 3 in the morning, because nobody would see him do it badly. 4,000 steps. It took him over an hour. An estate at 3 in the morning is not peaceful. It is simply empty. On the 4th lap, somebody was walking 10 meters behind him at exactly his pace. An old man in a flat cap and a navy anorak, walking briskly, going nowhere. He drew level, said good morning as though 3 was a normal time to say it, and carried on. And the panel did something it had not done in 10 days. Companion +1, rate $2 a step. They must be walking with you. Proximity is not company. So he walked faster and caught him up. His name was Bo, 72. He did not sleep, and he had walked that estate every night for 6 years. He said lying still was worse than walking. 2 laps, about 1,100 steps. At $2 a step, $2,200. And walking beside a 72-year-old insomniac, Noah Pike worked out the thing this story turns on. $2 a step is half the steps for the same money. Half the steps is half the damage. Every dollar on that treadmill he paid for in cartilage. Every dollar beside Bo cost him half as much. The thing destroying him was not the walking, it was doing it alone. Bo stopped at the shops, said he was for bed, and offered the same time tomorrow as though it were nothing. Noah said yes far too quickly and heard himself do it, because he had just worked out that another person standing next to him was worth $2 a step. It is the first genuinely ugly thing he ever thought, and it arrived a minute after the kindest thing that had happened to him in a year. He sat on the bed at 5 in the morning with his leg up and did the arithmetic properly for the first time. Alone at $1, 10,000 steps a day, the knee gives him about 4 months. With one person beside him, 8 months. With 3 years. With enough of them it stops being a countdown, which makes the most valuable thing in the world to Noah Pike other people's company. And he has spent 5 years arranging his life, so nobody has to watch him walk. He did not go to bed. He opened the laptop and started looking up walking groups. 11 within 4 miles, 3 of them met before 6. He wrote them all down on the back of a letter demanding $600. The next night he was at the shops at 3, 20 minutes early, and hated himself slightly for it. Bo came, said nothing about it, and started walking. 5 laps. Bo talked about a wife who died in the spring and a son in another country. Noah listened, and the number went up, and he could not entirely separate the two. By 5 they were 120 steps short of the goal, and Bo was going home. He nearly asked him for one more lap. He got as far as opening his mouth. Then he shut it, said good night, and did the last 120 on his own. It cost him $120 and about 400 steps of knee, and he decided it was worth it. It is the first decision he makes against his own arithmetic. It is not the last. He got home, cleared the goal on the stairs, and slept for 11 hours. When he woke, there were 4 unread messages from a walking group in the next borough. 9 people, Sundays, 6 in the morning, 4 miles along the canal. 9 people is 9 companions. He did not know yet whether the multiplier stacked. He typed a reply, deleted it, and typed a shorter one that made him sound normal. Then he sat on the edge of a bed in a bedsit and worked out what 9 people were worth an hour. And that is where it starts, not with a man getting rich, with a man pricing his friends. Sunday, 6 in the morning. A canal towpath 4 miles from his flat and 9 people he had never met. He got there 40 minutes early and walked the car park to avoid standing still. The organizer was called Mira. She ran it out of her phone and had done for 5 years. She asked his name, wrote it on her phone, and told him to stay at the back if his knee was bad. He had not told her about the knee. 9 of them set off at 6 exactly, 4 miles along the water and back. 200 meters in, the panel updated, and Noah Pike nearly walked into the canal. 9 companions, rate $6 a step, not 9, 6. The multiplier stacked, but it did not stack evenly. Each extra person was worth less than the one before. The first companion doubled it. The 9th added about 11 cents, which told him something he did not want to know yet, so he filed it and kept walking. A tall, thin 19-year-old dropped back to keep him company, entirely unasked. His name was Dev. He came because his mother made him and stayed because of the cafe afterwards. Noah answered in the shortest sentences. He could manage and watch the number climb. 4 miles out, 4 miles back, 8,000 steps at $6 each. $48,000 on a Sunday morning. For a walk he would have been able to do at 19 without noticing. And the knee at the end of it was sore, only sore. Afterwards they all went to a cafe, which Noah had not budgeted for and did not know how to refuse. He sat at the end of the table with a tea he did not want and earned nothing for 50 minutes. It was the first time in 3 weeks he had sat in a room with people talking and not been paid to be there. Mira asked if he was coming next week. He said yes before he had decided to. At home he wrote it all down, because a man with a system either takes notes or loses to it. 1 companion doubled it, 2 made it 3, 9 made it 6. The curve flattened fast and never quite stopped rising. which meant the efficient number of people was not as many as possible. It was about 4. 4 people walking with him 3 times a day would clear 10,000 steps at $4 each, $40,000 a day, and a knee that would last years instead of months. All he needed was 4 people who would walk beside him every day, for free forever. He had known one person for 11 days and 9 for morning. So that night he asked Bo if he ever walked in the daytime. Bo said he did not, because in the daytime there are people, and people want to talk about your wife. Noah said nothing to that, which was the correct thing to say, and did not know he had got it right. They walked 6 laps instead of 2, and Bo talked about a canal boat he nearly bought in the 80s. Noah listened to all of it and remembered most of it, and was not entirely sure why he was doing either. On the Monday, he handed in 4 weeks' notice at the depot. His supervisor asked what he was going into. He said walking, and it was accepted without comment. He worked the 4 weeks anyway, because the money in the panel still did not feel like it would be there tomorrow. He cleared the 41,000 on a Tuesday afternoon from a laptop in about 90 seconds. The confirmation was 1 line and a reference number. He sat and looked at it for a long time and waited to feel something. It did not arrive. Debt is a weight, and taking it off does not feel like lightness. It feels like nothing at all. So he got up, put his trainers on, and went to find somebody to walk with. He went to 3 groups that week, then 5 the week after. Sunday canal at 6, Tuesday park at 9, Wednesday hospital walking group at 2, which was slow and paid the same. He learned the shape of the thing quickly. Slow groups pay exactly as much as fast ones. A step is a step. The panel had no opinion about pace at all, which meant the slowest, oldest, least mobile groups in the city were worth exactly as much as anybody. He did not let himself finish that thought either. He was getting good at not finishing thoughts. At the end of the first month, the panel gave him a summary, and Noah Pike sat down on the floor. $1.2 million in 30 days from walking. He was sitting on the carpet of a $400 a month bedsit, and he did not know a single person he could tell. That night he nearly told Bo. He got as far as saying that something had happened at work. Bo said good, and asked whether it was the sort of thing that would keep him from walking. Noah said no. Bo said good again, and that was the whole conversation. He moved out of the bedsit in the 6th week, into a flat with a proper bedroom and a bath. He bought a bed, a table, 2 chairs, and nothing else for 4 months. 2 chairs in a flat where nobody visited is the most hopeful thing he did that year. In the 8th week, Mira asked him, on the towpath, why he came to 5 different groups. He had an answer ready, because he had known for 2 weeks that somebody would eventually ask. He said his physio told him to walk as much as possible, and he could not stand doing it alone, which was true in every particular and a lie in its entirety, and it worked perfectly. In the cafe afterwards, Dev asked whether he wanted to come to a thing on Saturday, and Noah said yes on reflex, then panicked. Because a thing on Saturday is a room, and a room does not pay anything at all. He went anyway. It was a birthday in a pub, and he stood for 4 hours because standing at least felt like nearly walking. He earned $411 that evening, pacing to the bar and back, and hated every one of them. He walked home from it at 1 in the morning, 5 miles on purpose, and cleared the goal at the door. And the knee held because he had been careful for 8 weeks, and he noticed that he had been careful only because of the money. In the 10th week, he did the sum he had been avoiding since the towpath. 4 companions, 3 hours a day, is 12 hours of somebody else's time. Nobody gives you 12 hours a day for nothing. Not for years, not without a reason. Bo walked because he could not sleep. Mira walked because she ran a group. Dev walked because his mother made him. None of those reasons belonged to him, and all 3 of them could stop on any given Tuesday. There was one reason that did belong to him. He had 1.2 million of it. He sat with that for 2 days before he did anything about it, which he later thought was the last decent thing he did that year. Then, on a Tuesday, he offered Dev $50 an hour to walk with him. Dev laughed, then realized he was serious, and asked what the catch was. Noah said there was no catch and that he could stop whenever he wanted, which was true and was also the catch. Dev said yes, because he was 19 and $50 an hour is not a decision. They walked 2 miles, and the panel gave him a number he had never seen before. 1 companion, rate $1.40, not 2. Companion multiplier reduced. Compensated company is weighted lower. It knew, it had always known, and it had simply never had a reason to say so. Dev 40 meters ahead, turned round and asked if he was all right. Noah said he was fine and walked on, and did the arithmetic while a 19-year-old talked at him about a video game. Paid company was worth about 70% of free company. It was still worth more than nobody. So it worked, that is the part that mattered. It was worse and it worked. By the end of that month, he was paying 4 people. Dev, a retired postman, called Arthur, 2 students who split the shifts between them. He called it a walking job and paid weekly in cash, and every one of them thought he was eccentric and rich. They were right on both counts, and it did not make him feel any better about it. He never offered Bo anything. He told himself it was because Bo would refuse. It was because Bo was the only line he had left. They were on the 4th lap when Bo asked, entirely casually, what he actually did for money now. Noah had 4 prepared answers and did not use any of them. He said he had come into some money and that it was complicated. Bo said most money is. Then he asked whether Noah still needed to walk or whether he just did. It is the only question anybody asked Noah Pike that year that he could not answer at all. They finished the lap in silence, and Bo said goodnight at the shops as though nothing had happened. Noah walked another 11 laps on his own after he left. At $1 a step, alone, which was the most expensive walking he had done in 2 months. He got home at 5, put his leg up, and looked at a wall for a while. $1.9 million, 4 employees, and 1 friend he was lying to. The knee had stopped being the problem sometime in the last month, and he had not noticed the handover. He was going to be able to walk for years. That had never been in doubt since the towpath. The question was who was going to be walking next to him when he did. By the 12th week, there was a whiteboard leaning against the wall of a flat with almost no furniture in it, and on the whiteboard was a timetable. 6 in the morning, Canal, 9 Park, 2 Hospital Group, 6 in the evening, Riverside, 11 at night, whoever would take the shift. 12 people on the board, 4 of them free, which is to say friends, and 8 of them paid, which is to say staff. He had worked out by then that the panel could tell the difference, and that the difference was worth about 30%, and that he was going to keep paying people anyway, because 70% of something, reliably, at 8 in the morning, beats 100% of whoever happens to feel like company that day. That sentence is the whole of what happened to Noah Pike in his 2nd month, and he wrote it in a notebook without noticing what it was. The paid walks were efficient and quiet and slightly unbearable. Dev talked, which helped. The retired postman did not, which was worse. 2 hours of walking beside somebody who has been paid to be there is a specific kind of silence. It sounds exactly like company, and it is not. The panel did not care. It counted the steps, applied the reduced multiplier, and paid out to the cent 4 times a day without comment. In the 14th week, he crossed $3 million, standing beside a boating lake, listening to a 19-year-old explain a card game. $3,041,000, 986,000 steps, 74 consecutive days without missing the goal once. He looked at the streak line longer than the money. 74 days. 1 missed morning and the rate went back to $1, and it would take months to climb again, which meant he had not had a day off in 11 weeks, and would not be having one, and had already quietly decided that before he finished reading the line. He bought things because that is what the story is supposed to do at this point, and it turned out to be the least interesting part of the whole year. A sofa, a television he never turned on, a washing machine which he genuinely enjoyed. Good trainers, 4 pairs, rotated because the panel does not pay for blisters. He did not buy a car. He thought about it for 1 afternoon and understood that a car is a machine for not walking, and that he now had a professional objection to those. In the 15th week, Mira stopped him on the towpath before the group set off and asked him, without any preamble at all, whether he was paying Dev. He had 11 prepared answers by then, and he used none of them, because she had asked it in the tone of somebody who already knew and was giving him one chance. He said yes. He said he was paying Dev and 3 others, that it was $50 an hour, and that he had not recruited anybody from her group without asking them first. Mira said that asking them first was not the part she had a problem with. She said she had run that group for 5 years, that it was free, that it was the only thing 3 of those people had in the week, and that she did not want it becoming a place people got hired out of. Noah said he understood. He did understand. He had understood it for about 3 weeks and had kept doing it anyway, which is a different thing entirely. Then she asked the question that mattered, which was what he needed all this walking for, and she asked it kindly, which made it very much worse. He looked at a woman in a coral jacket on a wet towpath at 6 in the morning and considered, for about 4 seconds, telling her the entire truth. Then he said the physio line again, because it had worked 11 times, and watched something close behind her face that did not open again for a long while. She said all right, and that he was welcome on Sundays, and that she would rather he did his hiring somewhere else. Then she went and started the walk. Noah walked at the very back that morning and earned $4,000 and did not speak to anybody, and afterwards he did not go to the cafe. That night he told Bo about it, not the money, the rest of it, that he had upset somebody and that she had been right to be upset. Bo listened to the whole thing without interrupting, which took 2 laps, and then asked whether he had apologized or merely explained. Noah said he had explained. Bo said that was what he thought and did not say anything else about it, and that silence lasted about 400 meters. It was the most uncomfortable 400 meters of Noah Pike's life, and it cost him $800, and he would have paid considerably more to get out of it. Then Bo said that in his experience, a person who explains is telling you they intend to do it again, and a person who apologizes is telling you they might not. He said it entirely without judgment, in the way that only somebody who is not asking you for anything can, and Noah thought about it for 3 days. On the Wednesday he found Mira in the cafe on her own, sat down opposite her without being invited, and apologized properly, which took him about 40 seconds and cost him nothing at all. She heard him out, said thank you, and then told him he still had not answered her question, which was true and which he had been hoping she had forgotten. So he told her a true thing that was not the truth. He said he had been given money he did not earn, that it was contingent on something stupid, and that he could not explain the something. Mira looked at him for a while and said that was the first thing he had said to her in 4 months that sounded like it came from him. Then she ordered him breakfast without asking what he wanted, and they sat in a cafe for an hour and 10 minutes, and he earned precisely nothing the entire time. He noticed that he had not once checked the panel, somewhere around the 50-minute mark, and the noticing was the strangest thing that had happened to him since the bus. He walked home the long way, cleared the goal, and stood in his own kitchen for a while trying to work out why he felt worse rather than better. He worked it out at about 2 in the morning. The hour in the cafe was the first hour in 4 months he had spent with somebody that he had not been able to price, and that he had spent the whole of it slightly panicking, because he had no idea what she was getting out of it, and everything else in his life had a rate. The operation kept growing anyway, because it was easier to grow it than to look at it. By the 18th week, there were 19 names on the whiteboard, and he had stopped writing them in pen, because the turnover was high enough to make pen wasteful. Students mostly, a man between jobs, 2 retired women who did it for the company and took the money as an afterthought and were worth more than anybody. He noticed that the 2 who would have come anyway paid out at nearly the full rate, and the ones who came only for the money paid out at about 2/3. The panel was not measuring whether he paid them. It was measuring whether they would have been there anyway, which is a considerably more uncomfortable thing to be able to measure. Which meant Noah Pike now had, running quietly in the corner of his vision, an instrument that told him exactly how much anybody near him actually wanted to be there. He did not use it on Bo. He wants that on the record. He never once checked what Bo's number was, and it is the only restraint he showed that entire year. In the 20th week, Dev asked, on the towpath, whether he could have more hours because his mother's shifts had been cut and things at home were tight. Noah said yes immediately and doubled his hours on the spot, and felt good about it for about 90 seconds. Then he understood that he had just made a 19-year-old financially dependent on walking next to him, and that this would show up in the multiplier, and that it would show up as a reduction. It did. Within a week, Dev's contribution had dropped by 1/5, and the panel put a line under it that Noah read about 40 times. Waiting reflects why they are here, not who they are. He stood on a towpath and understood that every single improvement he made to somebody's life reduced the amount they were worth to him, and that the system had been built that way on purpose. That night he did something he had not done since the first week, which was to sit down and try to work out what the thing actually wanted from him. It paid for movement. It paid double for movement beside somebody. It paid less when that somebody was bought. It reset if he stopped. Read as a set of incentives rather than a set of rules. It was not a lottery win. It was a training program, and it had one objective, and the objective was not money. It wanted him upright outdoors and next to people who chose to be there. Every clause in it pushed toward that and away from everything else. Which was, he thought, either the kindest thing anybody had ever done for him, or a very elegant way of getting a man to rebuild his own life without noticing. He wrote both possibilities down and underlined neither, and in the morning he canceled 6 of the paid shifts. Not out of principle, he kept Dev and the 2 retired women. He canceled the ones who plainly did not want to be there, and the rate went up. It always went up. That is the part he could never get away from. Every decent thing he did in that year also happened to be the profitable one. In the 22nd week, Bo was not at the shops at 3, and Noah stood there for 50 minutes before he understood that he was not coming. He did not have a phone number. In 7 months of walking beside a man 5 nights a week, he had never once asked for one, and he understood in that moment exactly why. Because a phone number is a thing you have for people who might not turn up, and he had needed Bo to be a fixed feature of the world rather than a person with a life. He walked the estate on his own until 5:30 at $1 a step, checking the corner every lap, which cost him about $11,000 in lost multiplier, and did not once occur to him as a loss. Bo was there the following night, entirely as usual, and said his knee had been bad and he had stayed in. Noah heard the word knee and did not say anything for 11 seconds, which Bo noticed and did not mention. They walked 4 laps, and Bo talked about a hospital appointment he had been putting off since the spring, and Noah listened in a way he had not listened to anything in months. At the end of it, he asked for Bo's phone number, which took him 3 attempts to get out, and Bo gave it to him and asked what had taken so long. He saved it under Bo with no surname because he did not know it, and that gap sat in his phone for another 4 months. The knee held all through the summer. That is the strangest sentence in this whole story, and Noah did not trust it once. 4 miles a day at $4 a step, spread across 5 short walks with company, is about $16,000, and roughly a tenth of the damage of doing it alone in one go. He had a physiotherapist by then, privately, twice a week, who told him at the end of August that the joint was more stable than it had been in 5 years. She also told him that stable is not the same as repaired, and that he should be planning for a joint replacement in his 30s rather than his 50s. He heard the second part and went home and walked 11 miles on his own that night, which is the exact opposite of what she had said, and he knew it while he was doing it. There is a particular thing people do when they are told a deadline they cannot argue with, and Noah Pike did it that night for 4 hours at $1 a step. In the morning, the knee was swollen, and he canceled all 5 walks and lay on the sofa with a bag of ice, and did not clear the goal for the first time in 91 days. At midnight, the streak went to 0, and the rate went back to $1, and Noah lay on a sofa and watched 3 months of work disappear in a single line. He had $4.8 million in the panel, and it did not make the slightest difference to how that felt. That is worth saying plainly. $4.8 million, and losing a streak he could not spend hurt more than the debt ever had. He was back out at 6 the next morning on the canal, 3 days too early, and Mira took one look at how he was walking and told him to go home. He said he was fine. She said he was walking like her father, who was 68 and had a hip, and that she was not having him on her towpath doing that to himself. Noah stood on a wet towpath and argued with her for 4 minutes about his own leg, and lost, and went home, and was more grateful about it than he could work out how to say. He rested for 9 days, which he had not done voluntarily in his adult life, and rebuilt the streak from $1 with a discipline that frightened the people around him. 61 days later, he was back at $4 a step and had not missed a morning, and Dev told him on a park path that he was not sure this was a job anymore. He said he would still come if the money stopped. He said it awkwardly and immediately changed the subject, the way 19-year-olds do when they have said a true thing by accident. The panel reclassified him inside 4 minutes, and Noah had to stop walking and stand under a tree for a while. One companion reclassified. He read that line and understood that a machine had just told him he had a friend, and that he had needed a machine to tell him. He kept paying Dev. He never told him about the reclassification, and he raised his rate the following week for reasons he declined to examine. That night he sat at the plain table with 2 chairs, in a flat with a sofa nobody had ever sat on except him, and worked out that he had 4 people in his life. An insomniac of 72, a 19-year-old on his payroll, a woman who ran a walking group and had thrown him off her towpath, and 2 retired women whose surnames he did not know, which is 4 more than he had in February, and he made himself write that down too, in the same handwriting on the same page. He was 25 in the November. Nobody knew because he had never told anybody when his birthday was, and he walked 18,000 steps that day with 4 different people. Bo found out about the birthday 3 weeks later from something Dev said, and was so annoyed about it that he did not speak for an entire lap. Then he said that a man who does not tell anybody his birthday is a man arranging for nobody to be disappointed, and that Noah should stop doing that, and started talking about football. Noah Pike, $5 million up, walked half a lap of a housing estate at 3 in the morning, trying not to let a 72-year-old see his face. That is where the first year ends. Not with the money, which by then was arriving faster than he could think about it. With a man who had built an entire operation out of buying company, finally being caught out by somebody who had never charged him a penny for it. The appointment was in January, in a private consulting room with carpet, which Noah had paid for out of a balance he still did not entirely believe in. He had put it off for 4 months, which he told himself was because he was busy, and which was because he already knew. The consultant put 2 scans side by side on a monitor, one from the second operation 5 years earlier, one from that morning. He said the good news first, which is always how you know the shape of what is coming. The good news was that the surrounding muscle was in better condition than he had seen in a patient with that history, and that whatever Noah had been doing for the last year had plainly worked. The bad news was that muscle is not cartilage, that the joint surface had continued to go regardless, and that the rate of loss over the last 12 months had been unusually fast. He asked what unusually fast meant. The consultant said it meant somebody had been walking a great deal more than he had told anybody about. Noah did not deny it, which surprised him. He said he walked about 20,000 steps a day most days and had done for a year. There was a pause of the kind that cost several £100 an hour, and then the consultant asked him, quite gently, why. Noah said he had found something that made it worth it. The consultant said nothing was worth it and wrote a word on the pad in front of him and turned it round. The word was replacement, and Noah Pike was 25 years old. A replacement joint lasts about 20 years. He would need a second at 45 and a third at 65, and there is no fourth. The consultant said the arithmetic out loud without meaning it as arithmetic, and Noah heard it as arithmetic, because that is the only way he had heard anything for a year. He asked how long he had before it became necessary. The consultant said that depended entirely on how much he walked, and looked at him properly, and did not say anything else. Noah walked out of that building and did 9,000 steps before he got home, on purpose, at $4 each, and knew exactly what he was doing while he did it. That night he did the sum he had been avoiding since the towpath, properly with the actual numbers, at the plain table with 2 chairs. 20,000 steps a day, $4 a step, $30 million a year, and 1 joint replacement every 4 years instead of every 20. 10,000 steps a day, $15 million a year, 1 replacement every 8 years, 5,000 steps a day, $7 million every 15. There is a version of this story where he takes the last line and lives quietly on $7 million a year, and Noah Pike wrote that line down and looked at it for a long time. Then he underlined the middle one, because 10,000 was the daily goal and the streak was at 61 days, and he could not make himself break it. That is the decision. Everything that happens afterwards comes out of a man at a table choosing the middle number because the streak was at 61. He told Bo about the appointment 2 nights later, on the 4th lap, and it was the first entirely true thing he had told anybody in 11 months. Bo asked what he was going to do about it. Noah said he was going to keep walking. Bo said that was what he thought, and then said something that took Noah 4 months to understand. He said he had spent 40 years working nights at a printworks and had a spine that would not straighten, and that nobody had ever offered him anything for it. He said that a man who is being paid for the damage is at least being asked, and that being asked is not nothing, and that Noah should stop behaving as though it had been done to him. Noah walked half a lap without answering. It had not once occurred to him that he had been choosing, and hearing it from a man with a ruined back was not comfortable. The man in the gray jacket first appeared on the canal in February, at the back of the Sunday group, and walked the whole 4 miles without speaking to anybody. He was there the following Sunday, and the one after always at the back, always alone, and never once at the cafe afterwards. Noah noticed him in the 3rd week, because Noah noticed everybody now, and because the panel had started doing something odd whenever the man was within about 6 meters. The rate went up by more than a stranger should be worth, and stayed up, and the panel put a line under it that Noah had never seen before. One companion waiting unusually high, which meant that whoever the man in the gray jacket was, he was not there by accident, and he was not there reluctantly. So on the fourth Sunday, Noah dropped back and walked beside him, and the man said good morning as though he had been waiting several weeks for exactly that. His name was Julian Caro. He was 46. He said he had recently sold a logistics business and was finding retirement extremely boring. Every word of that was true, which Noah confirmed later, and it explained absolutely nothing about why a man like that was on a towpath at 6 on a Sunday. They walked 2 miles, and Caro asked him 7 questions, all of them about walking, none of them about him, and Noah answered all 7 before he noticed the pattern. He had spent a year being the most careful man in the city about what he said, and he had given away 4 things in 2 miles to somebody who had never once asked directly. Caro did not come to the cafe. He said goodbye at the bridge, said he would see him next week, and walked off toward a car Noah did not see him get into. Noah went home and looked him up, and everything checked out, and the checking out was the part that worried him. A man with nothing to hide has a small footprint. A man with a very clean, very complete, very easily found footprint has usually arranged it. Caro came every Sunday for 11 weeks. He never asked for anything. He never came to the cafe. He walked at the back with Noah and asked questions about walking. And the rate every single Sunday went up by more than it should have, which meant that whatever Caro wanted, he genuinely wanted to be there, which is the thing Noah could never get past. The panel measured wanting to be there. It could not be gamed, and Caro was scoring higher than anybody except Bo. In May, Caro asked him for the first thing. He asked whether Noah had ever thought about doing it at scale. He had hired the hall himself. He had a proposal on 2 sides of paper. He had costed it, staffed it, and named it, and he had not told Noah any of that until they were standing in the room. A free weekly community walk. Insured, stewarded, advertised, with a coach and a tea urn, and a route for people who could not manage 4 miles. Noah read it twice. It was a genuinely good proposal. It would help a large number of people. It would also put 400 bodies within 6 meters of him every Saturday morning. He asked Caro why he cared. Caro said he had spent 19 years moving parcels efficiently and would quite like to move people usefully, and it sounded entirely true. It was entirely true. That is the thing about Julian Caro that took Noah 2 years to understand. He never once lied to him about anything. He said yes. He funded it out of a balance that had passed 8 million in March, and it opened in June, and 11 people came to the first one. 40 came to the 4th, 111 to the 9th. By September, it was 400 people on a Saturday morning, and the council had asked them to use the park instead. Mira ran the route planning because Caro asked her to, and because she was better at it than either of them. And she did it for nothing and would not discuss being paid. 411 people, $31.80 a step. $31 a step, times 10,000 steps, is $318,000 for a Saturday morning walk in a park. He walked in the middle of 400 people and felt approximately nothing, and it took him until the following Tuesday to work out why. Because 400 people at $31 is worth less per person than one insomniac at 3 in the morning, and because none of them knew his name. The curve was logarithmic, and he had known that since the 9th week of the first year, and he had built an entire institution on the flattest part of it. 400 strangers, $31, 4 friends, about 11. The gap was real, and it was not remotely worth what it had cost to build. He said all of that to Caro on the towpath in October, without meaning to, in about 90 seconds, and it was the single largest mistake he made in 2 years. He did not say what the panel was. He did not say there was a panel. He said that walking with a few people he knew was worth more to him than walking with hundreds who did not know him. Caro said that was interesting, in the tone of a man filing something, and then asked one question that Noah answered before he heard it properly. He asked whether it was worth more, or whether it was worth more per person. Noah said per person. Then he stopped walking in the middle of a towpath and understood that he had just confirmed the existence of a rate to a man he did not trust. Caro did not press. He never pressed. He said it was a cold morning and asked whether Noah wanted to get a coffee and changed the subject entirely. That is the whole method. He never asked twice for anything, and he never needed to because he asked once and then simply waited nearby for 11 weeks. He told Bo about Caro that night, and Bo asked one question, which was whether the man had ever asked him for money. Noah said no. Bo asked whether he had ever asked for anything at all. Noah thought about it and said only for the walking group and that he had paid for that himself. Bo said that a man who wants money asks for money, and a man who wants something else takes 11 weeks and a Sunday morning, and told him to be careful and then talked about a boiler. In November, the walking group hit 900 people, and a local paper ran 400 words about it and named Julian Caro as the founder. Noah read it 4 times and felt something he did not have a name for, and then worked out that it was relief, and then felt considerably worse. Relief because being named would have meant questions, and worse because a man who has just built the largest walking group in the city had wanted his name kept off it, and Noah had not asked why. In December, on a frozen towpath, Caro made his offer, and it was not the offer Noah had spent 4 months preparing for. He did not ask for money. He did not ask what the walking was for. He said that whatever Noah was doing, he was clearly doing it alone and that it did not look like it was going well. He offered to help him run it, whatever it was. He said he was good at logistics, that he had nothing else to do, and that he would not ask what it was until Noah wanted to tell him. It is, on any reading, the kindest offer Noah Pike received in the whole of this story, and it came from the only person in it who was working him. He said he would think about it. Caro said of course, and did not mention it again for 5 weeks, which is exactly how long it took Noah to decide he wanted to say yes. In January, Bo missed 4 nights in a row, and this time Noah had a phone number and used it on the 2nd night. It rang out twice. On the 3rd night, a woman answered, said she was Bo's daughter, and asked who he was. Noah said he was a friend, and heard how strange that sounded out loud, and then heard the pause on the other end that meant she had not heard of him. Bo had had a fall on the Tuesday in his own kitchen, and had broken his wrist and cracked 2 ribs, and had been in hospital for 3 days. Nobody had told Noah because there was nobody to tell, because he was a man his friend's daughter had never heard of. He walked 11 miles that night at $1 a step in the frost and did not notice the rate once. In the morning he found the hospital, then the ward, then discovered Bo had been discharged, and then spent 2 hours working out that he did not know which block Bo lived in. 7 months of walking beside somebody 5 nights a week, and he could not have pointed at his front door. So he did the only thing available, which was to stand in the middle of a housing estate at 3 in the morning and wait. 5 nights running in January. On the 6th night, Bo came round the corner with his arm in a cast and told him he was an idiot for standing about in that weather. Noah said several things very quickly, and none of them came out right, and Bo let him finish, and then said that he had not thought anybody would notice. He said it without any self-pity at all, as a piece of information, and it landed on Noah harder than the consultant's pad had. They walked 1 slow lap, because that was all the ribs would take, and Noah earned about $400 and would have paid every penny he had for the lap. Then he got Bo's flat number, and his daughter's name, and his surname, which he had not known for 11 months, and wrote all 3 in a notebook like a man taking evidence. And on the following Sunday, on a frozen towpath, he told Julian Caro that he would like the help after all. Caro shook his hand and said he was glad, and asked nothing at all, and started the following Monday. $11,900,000, 214 consecutive days, and a knee that would need replacing inside 3 years. He had 4 friends, 900 strangers, 1 employee he had made dependent on him, and a business partner who had spent 11 months and 1 Sunday morning acquiring him. That night he wrote the whole of it out at the plain table, both columns, everything he had and everything it had cost, and did not draw a line under either. Under it, on the same page, he wrote the only line from the whole year that he ever showed anybody. It said, "I have 4 people, and I found all of them by accident." He was 26 in the November. Bo came for dinner, which was the first time anybody had sat in the 2nd chair, and complained about the food for an hour. Noah earned $211 that evening, pacing to the kitchen and back, and it is the only figure from that entire year he can still remember without checking. 11 weeks later, Julian Caro had access to the routes, the rota, the insurance, the payroll, and the bank account, because Noah gave him all 5 and never once regretted the giving. What he regretted afterwards was that he had spent 2 years learning exactly how to measure whether somebody wanted to be near him, and had never once pointed it at the one man who had asked to be. The 3rd year is the one people ask about, and it is the one Noah remembers least, which he has never been able to explain to anybody's satisfaction. Julian Caro had the routes, the rota, the insurance, the payroll, and the bank account, and within 90 days all 5 of them worked better than they ever had. The Saturday walk went from 200 people to 400. Marshals in numbered bibs, a start time nobody had to be reminded of. None of that cost Noah anything except a signature, and the effect on his own life was immediate and at the time entirely welcome. He no longer had to find anybody. People arrived in a diary, 4 routes a day, each with somebody already committed to walking it beside him. 22,000 steps, $4 a step, $89,600 in a day on a Tuesday for walking. He had crossed a line somewhere in the previous autumn, where the daily figure stopped being a number he could feel and became a number he could only read. $89,000 means something to a man on a night shift. It means nothing whatsoever to a man who made $81,000 yesterday. Bo said on the estate at 3 in the morning that a man who cannot feel his own wages has stopped being paid and started being fed. Noah told him that was the same thing. Bo said it was not, and then would not say why, which was a thing he did when he wanted an argument to keep working. In February, Caro put a proposal on the table that Noah had not asked for, and could not immediately find anything wrong with. Group walks, not one companion at a time on 4 separate routes, but 8 or 10 people together, and Noah in the middle of them. Noah had never tried it, because for 2 years the arithmetic had been simple, and he had been frightened of finding out that it was not. They ran it on a Sunday morning in the park, with 9 people, and Noah spent the first 400 meters watching a figure that would not settle. 9 people, a weighted value of 6.2, a rate of $7.20, not the 10 he had expected, and there was the whole problem in one line. It did not multiply. 9 people did not make 9. They made 6.2, and the figure moved around inside the walk as people drifted in and out of earshot. When 2 of them fell back to talk to each other, the number dropped. When a woman he had never met walked beside him for 11 minutes, it went up more than either of them was worth alone. It was not counting bodies. It had never been counting bodies. It was counting whether he was actually with them, and it was better at telling than he was. Mira caught him standing still and asked what was wrong, and Noah said he was working out the maths of it, which was the most honest thing he had said in months. She said the maths of what? And he said the maths of a group walk, and she said that was the least romantic sentence anybody had ever said in that park. 6.2 out of 9 is not a failure. 6.2 out of 9, at $4 extra ahead over a 14,000-step morning, is about $250,000. They ran group walks 4 days a week from March. Noah's average daily figure went from $80,000 to a little over $200,000 inside 6 weeks. He stopped opening the banking app in April, not out of restraint. He stopped because the figure had 4 commas in it and had ceased to describe anything he understood. The panel he still read every night because the panel gave him steps, and steps he could feel in his feet. Dev Rai worked out how the routes were chosen in the 2nd week of April, which nobody had asked him to do and which took him about 4 evenings. He had noticed that every route in the rota was a loop, that none of them crossed a road twice, and that all of them avoided stairs, escalators, and moving walkways entirely. Noah felt the whole thing tip. Dev had not worked out the rule. He had worked out that there was one, which is the harder half. Dev's theory was that Noah had a joint condition, that stairs were medically off the table, and that the loops were about not getting stranded, and he was extremely pleased with it. Noah agreed with it immediately and enthusiastically, and then walked 11 miles that night and could not sleep afterwards. The nearest anybody came in 5 years to finding it out was a 19-year-old with headphones on a ring road, working from timetables. Caro's second proposal came in May, and Noah turned it down flat, which is the only time in the whole arrangement that he did. Caro wanted to pay a core group, not marshals, walkers, 12 people on a small monthly retainer whose job was simply to turn up and be company. It was, from where Caro was sitting, the obvious next step. Reliability was the constraint. Retainers fix reliability. He had a spreadsheet showing the improvement. Noah said no. Caro asked why reasonably twice, and Noah did not have a reason he could give without giving away the whole thing. The reason was that he had tested it in the first year and knew exactly what a paid companion is worth, and it is about 1/3 of a free one. Caro accepted it without a flicker and never raised it again and made a note. Noah did not see him make the note and would not have thought anything of it if he had. Bo had opinions about Caro, which he delivered on the estate at 3 in the morning in installments over about 5 months. The first installment was that a man who is never bored is a man who is always working. The second was that he liked him. Bo did not consider these to be in conflict. The estate lap did not change all year. 480 meters, 610 steps, $2 each because it was one man and never more. $1,220 a lap, out of a day that was clearing 200,000, and it was the only figure all year that he still checked on purpose. Weighting 1.00, the maximum the instrument gives. Bo had held it since the 11th night and had never once dipped through 2 winters, a flu, and a funeral. Bo's wife had died 4 years before Noah met him. He mentioned it once in June in the middle of a sentence about buses and did not stop walking. Noah understood, walking behind him for 4 steps, that the 3 o'clock lap had been running for Bo long before he showed up in it. The knee went in July, not dramatically. It swelled after a 29,000-step Thursday and did not go back down for 11 days. The physiotherapist he paid £400 to see put both thumbs either side of the joint, moved it 9 degrees, and asked how many steps a day he was doing. Noah said 15,000, which was a lie by about half, and the physiotherapist said that was already twice what that joint had left in it. Reconstructed at 17, cartilage already thinning at 19. What he had was a joint with a mileage limit, and he had been driving it like a hire car. He was told to cap it at 8,000 a day, take 2 full rest days a week, and come back in 3 months. 8,000 a day at group walk rates is about $50,000. 29,000 a day is about 200. He did that sum in the corridor on the way out. He did not go back in 3 months. He did not go back for 2 years, and when he did, it was on a trolley. What he did instead was reasonable, in the way that all of the worst decisions in this story are reasonable. He bought better shoes, then a compression sleeve, then a second physiotherapist who told him the same thing and was not asked back, then anti-inflammatories in a quantity he did not tell anybody about. The panel never mentioned his knee. It had no opinion about it. That is the thing people misunderstand about the arrangement. It was not looking after him and had never offered to. Mira asked him in August on the park route why he had started walking on the outside of the group, and he said he had not noticed that he had. He had, on the outside of a group you are nearest to the most people. He had worked that out in April and had been quietly doing it ever since. Mira said it made him look like a sheepdog, and that people had started to find it reassuring, which was the exact opposite of what he had intended, and he took it badly. He had spent the whole year arranging his own body around a payout table, and somebody had looked at the result and seen a man taking care of people. Both descriptions were correct. That is the part he could not get past in August and could not get past in the hospital either. Dev built the route app in September, unpaid in 3 weeks, because Caro had mentioned in passing that the marshals were still using a paper register. It logged attendance, routes, and durations, and it worked properly on the first Saturday, and 400 people used it without being asked to. Noah understood, watching him demonstrate it, that he had just been handed the exact dataset he had spent 3 years buying one walk at a time. Who turns up, how often, how long they stay. Everything the panel had been telling him privately, sitting on a shared drive for anybody with a login. He thanked Dev, told him it was excellent, and meant both. Then he went and walked the ring road for 4 hours because he did not know what else to do with it. Alone on a ring road, at $1 a step, and it is worth saying that a 4-hour solo walk at that rate is about $18,000, which was, by October of that year, less than a tenth of what a Saturday morning brought in. And this is the point at which the money stops being the story. In October, Caro asked what the money was for, not aggressively, the way an accountant asks at the end of a list of other questions with a pen already down. Noah had not thought about it in about 14 months. He had $11 million, 4 routes, 900 acquaintances, and no plan of any kind whatsoever. He said he did not know. Caro said that was the first genuinely honest answer he had given him, and went back to the folder, and the meeting carried on. Noah put the same question to Bo that night at 3 in the morning, and Bo said that a man asking what money is for has generally already got too much of it. Then he said that Noah should buy his mother a house, and Noah said his mother was dead, and Bo said then buy somebody else's mother a house, and walked on. It was a joke. Noah did it in November anyway, For a woman on the Saturday walk whose landlord had sold the building out from under her and told nobody at all. It cost $240,000, which was 14 hours of walking, and he has never been able to decide whether that makes it generous or meaningless. The Saturday walk hit 600 people in November. There were 2 start waves, a first aid point, and a man selling coffee from a van at the gate who was not affiliated with anybody. Noah walked in it as an ordinary member with his hood up, and in 600 people about 9 of them knew he had anything to do with it. 31 people close enough to count. A weighted 11.4, $12.40 a step, and a 9,900 step morning is $122,000. In 2 hours, in a park, surrounded by 600 people who thought they were getting some exercise, and every one of them was correct. That is the defense he used on himself for 3 years, and it is not a bad one. Nobody was harmed. Everybody who came because they wanted to. He was not lying to anybody about anything. He was simply the only person in the park who knew what everybody in it was worth per step, and had arranged the whole park in order to be in the middle of it. He was 27 in the November. He told 3 people in advance, which for him was an enormous concession and had been Bo's idea a year earlier. Bo came and Mira came, and Dev came and brought a cake he had plainly made himself and which was structurally unsound. Nobody talked about walking for 4 hours. Noah earned $411 that evening, pacing between the table and the kitchenette, and did not look at the figure once. It is the only evening from that entire year that he can describe in detail, and it is worth about 2 minutes of a Saturday morning. Bo stayed until 2 and then said he would walk the lap at 73, after 4 hours of dinner, and did. On the second lap he said that Noah had got quiet that year, and Noah said he was fine, and Bo said that he had not asked whether he was fine. He said that a man who is doing well and looks like that is a man doing well at something he has not told anybody about. Noah came within about 4 seconds of telling him everything, on a wet footpath, at 1:30 in the morning in his 28th year, and then did not. He said he was tired. Bo looked at him for a long moment, said that was a shame, and started walking again, and did not raise it for another 2 years. The year closed at $19 million, 461,000 steps in December alone, and a knee that had stopped going down at all between walks. 5,140,000 steps in 12 months, an average rate of $6.90, 19,400,000 in the bank, 731 days without a break. He noticed the streak line before he noticed the balance, and that is the sentence to keep from this chunk. 731 days is 2 years and 1 day. He had walked on Christmas, on his birthday, on the day of a funeral, and on the 11 days his knee would not bend. He told himself it was discipline. The physiotherapist had a different word for it and had said it to his face in July, and he had paid the invoice and not gone back. On New Year's Eve he walked the ring road alone from 11 until 4, because everybody he knew was at a party, and he had not been able to make himself go. 28,000 steps at $1 each. $28,000, which was the worst rate he had achieved in 18 months and was entirely his own doing. Mira had asked him twice. Dev had sent an address. Bo had told him what time to arrive at his daughter's, which was the closest anybody came to insisting. He had said yes to all 3 and gone to none of them, and walked instead, which paid $1 a step, which is the lowest number in the whole system. That is not a man optimizing a payout. That is a man who has found something he can do instead of the thing he is frightened of, and can do it for 5 hours. The panel paid him for it. It paid him for it every single night at the lowest rate it had, and it never once suggested he do anything else. That is the 3rd year. $19 million, 600 people in a park, and a man on an overbridge at 4 in the morning on the 1st of January. Nothing had gone wrong yet. That is what makes it the worst year. Everything was working exactly as designed, and the design was the problem. The problem with a business built on walking outdoors in that city is that for 4 months of the year it rains sideways and nobody comes. January attendance ran at about 1/3 of September. Noah's rate fell with it, and for the first time since the 2nd year his daily figure went backwards 2 months running. He solved it the way he had solved everything since the bus, which is to say he threw an obscene amount of money at a problem that a normal person would have simply waited out. In February, he leased an industrial unit on the estate behind the ring road, 1,100 square meters, and had 12 treadmills installed in 2 facing rows. The rule had allowed treadmills since the first week. A step is a step. It does not care what is under it, only that he is the one moving. He had tested that on the 8th night of the first year in a 24-hour gym and had not built anything on it. Because a treadmill on your own is $1 a step and a very long evening. 12 treadmills facing each other with a wide aisle down the middle is a different proposition entirely, and he had drawn it on a napkin before he had costed it. Caro priced the whole thing in an afternoon. Lease, fit-out, machines, insurance, a man to clean it. £94,000 a year, which was about 6 hours of walking. He asked no questions about why a walking group that met outdoors needed a room with no windows. And Noah understood by then that Caro's questions were never the ones he actually wanted answered. It opened on the 1st of March, free to anybody on the walking list, 7 until 11 every evening, and it was full within 9 days. Noah walked in the middle of the aisle, not on a machine. Up and down the aisle 4 hours a night between 2 rows of people at conversational distance. 11 people. A weighted 8.9, the highest ratio he had ever recorded, because on a treadmill nobody drifts out of earshot and nobody can leave. $9.90 a step. 16,000 steps in an evening. $159,000 in a shed in February with the rain coming down outside. It was the single most efficient thing he ever built, and it is the thing he is most ashamed of, and those two facts are not a coincidence. Dev came 4 nights a week and talked, on a treadmill, for 4 hours, about anything at all, and never once noticed that Noah always turned at his end of the aisle first. Mira came twice and hated it. She said it was a room full of people going nowhere with the door shut, and that she would rather be cold. Noah told her that was sentimental. She said it probably was, and went out into the rain and walked the park route on her own, and that is the entire disagreement. Bo would not set foot in it. Not in March, not in April, not in the December when it was -4 and the footpath had ice on it. He said that a man of 73 who starts walking indoors is a man who has agreed to something, and that he was not going to agree to it in a shed on an industrial estate. So the 3 o'clock lap stayed outdoors all winter, at $2 a step, 610 steps, in weather that Noah would not have gone out in for anybody else alive. $1,220, against $159,000 in the unit, and he did that lap 361 nights that year. In April, a man called Terrence started coming to the unit 5 nights a week and walking on the machine nearest the aisle and talking to Noah for the whole 4 hours. He was excellent company. He was funny, he remembered things, he asked about people by name. And his weighting sat at 0.4 and would not move. 0.41 across 38 sessions, flat. Everybody else in that room drifted up over a month or 2. Terrence did not move at all. It took Noah 9 weeks to find out why, and he found out by asking Caro a question he should not have needed to ask. Terrence was on the payroll, not as a walker. As a caretaker at £900 a month to open the unit at 6 and lock it at midnight and clean it on Sundays. It was an entirely proper arrangement. Caro had hired him in February, had put it in a report Noah had not read, and had picked him because he was already there every night anyway. Terrence liked Noah. Terrence was not pretending. But he was in that room because he was paid to be in that room, and the instrument had known it from the first night. 0.41, not 0. He did like him, just not enough to have been there for free, and the difference between those two things is 59% of $1 a step. That is the cruelest measurement in the whole system, and Noah had spent 4 years pretending he had not built his entire life around reading it. He walked the canal that night instead of the unit, alone at $1 a step for 9 miles and got home at 5:30 in the morning. He did not sack Terrence. He did not tell him. He kept him on the payroll and moved his treadmill to the far end of the row and never explained it to anybody. That is the first thing he did purely out of spite, and the man it was aimed at never found out it had happened, which is how spite usually works. The unit ran for 2 years. 411 people used it. Noah walked 11.5 million steps up and down that aisle and never once got on a machine. Somebody asked him about it once in the 2nd year, and he said the machines gave him motion sickness, which nobody questioned, because it is the sort of thing that is true about somebody. The truth is that a man on a treadmill is not walking anywhere, and the rule pays for steps, and Noah's steps had to be his own or the whole room was a very expensive social club. 11 people walking on the spot, going nowhere. so that one man in the middle of them could go about 11 miles a night without ever leaving a shed. Mira had described the room accurately on the first visit and had left. It took Noah 2 years and a joint replacement to arrive at the same sentence. In June, Bo invited him to the flat for the first time, which he had been putting off for 2 years for reasons that became obvious in about 9 seconds. There were 41 photographs on the sideboard. A wife, 3 children, 7 grandchildren, a wedding in 1974, and a great many people Noah could not identify. Noah had, at that point, 11 photographs of anything, all of them on a phone, 9 of them of routes. Bo made tea in a pot, which Noah had never seen anybody do, and talked for 2 hours about a shipping office he had worked in for 31 years and had not enjoyed. He said he had liked exactly 4 things about it, and that all 4 were people, and that he had not spoken to any of them since 1998. Noah asked why not. Bo said because you have to ring people, and ringing people is embarrassing, and 40 years goes by while you are being embarrassed. That is, as far as Noah is concerned, the most useful thing anybody has ever said to him. And it was said in a council flat over a pot of tea by a man who did not know he was saying it. Then Bo asked whether he was going to eat the last biscuit or whether they were going to sit there looking at it. And the moment was over, and neither of them mentioned it again. Noah rang 4 people that week. 2 former colleagues from the depot, a man he had shared a flat with at 19, and a physiotherapist he had been avoiding for 11 months. 3 of them were pleased to hear from him. The 4th told him to come in on Thursday and to stop lying about the step count this time. He went on the Thursday. He gave the real number, which was 31,000 a day, and watched a man he was paying stop writing halfway through a sentence. He was told in July of that year that the joint had perhaps 2 years in it at that rate, and possibly 10 if he capped it at 8,000. He was 27. He capped it at 24,000, which is not a cap, and told himself it was a compromise and was back in the aisle on the Friday. The compression sleeve went on in July and did not come off for 2 years. Nobody in that room ever asked about it, because a knee sleeve on a man who walks is not a question anybody thinks to ask. Dev noticed in August, not the sleeve, the turn. He said Noah had started turning at the end of the aisle in 2 steps instead of 3 on the right and only on the right. 19 years old, on a treadmill with headphones round his neck, and he had counted the steps in a turn. Noah told him it was an old football injury, which was true, and changed the subject. Dev accepted it. He always accepted it. Of the 5 people who came close, 4 accepted the first explanation they were given, and the 5th had a spreadsheet. Mira asked in September, on the canal, at 11 at night, why he had never once been seen at anybody's house. 3 years, 900 people. 4 birthdays, 2 weddings, 1 christening, and a funeral, and Noah Pike had attended precisely none of them, and had walked all 6 routes on all 6 days. He said he was not good in rooms. She said he ran a room with 12 treadmills in it and was in it every night, so that was not the answer either. The real answer is that a house is a room where you sit down, and sitting down pays nothing, and he had not been able to sit still in company since the 2nd year. He had not phrased it to himself that clearly until she asked. That is the function Mira Akanjo served for 4 years, and she did it entirely by accident and was never thanked for it. She said, walking on, that everybody had assumed for 3 years that he had a family somewhere that took up his weekends, and that a few of them had assumed it was worse than that. Noah asked what was worse than that. She said an ex-wife or a court order or a business that could not be discussed, and that on the whole the group had decided not to mind. 900 people had noticed that something was wrong with him, had discussed it, and had collectively decided it was none of their business and kept turning up anyway. The panel had been telling him for 3 years that these people were worth $4 a step to him. It had never mentioned that they had all quietly agreed to forgive him something. In October, Caro brought the Constitution. 12 pages. A committee, a treasurer, an annual meeting, and a clause about what happened if the founder stepped away. Noah read the clause 4 times. It was entirely standard. Caro had written it because organizations need one, and had put Noah's name in it because Noah's name was on the lease. What it made real on a Tuesday afternoon was that the walking group could carry on without him, and would, and that this was in writing on page 9. He signed it, of course he signed it. It was the correct thing to do, and he was not, whatever else, a stupid man. Caro said, putting the copies away, that it was a good organization, and that Noah had built something that would outlast him, and it was the only compliment he ever paid him. Noah went to the unit that night and walked the aisle for 5 hours instead of 4, and did not speak to anybody for the last 90 minutes of it. 24,900 steps, $7.10, $176,000 in one evening, and the last 90 minutes of it at $1 because he had stopped talking. He noticed the drop and did not do anything about it, which he had never done before. And that is the first genuine sign that the arrangement had stopped working on him. The estate lap that night was the 491st consecutive one, and Bo brought it up, because Bo had been counting the whole time and had never said. Noah asked why he had counted. Bo said because nobody had ever walked with him 491 times before, and that it seemed worth keeping track of. He said it as a fact, not a reproach, and then talked about a leak in his bathroom for the rest of the lap, and Noah did not hear a word of it. He asked the panel that night, for the first time in 18 months, what Bo's waiting had been over the whole run rather than on any given night. 491 sessions, a mean of 1.00, a deviation of 0. In 4 years, that is the only perfect figure the instrument ever produced. 900 people, 411 in the unit, 1,880 over the whole run, and exactly one of them had never once had an off night. He put his head back against the desk and sat on the floor of an empty flat and did the only piece of arithmetic from that year that he now regrets. Bo was 73. Life expectancy for a man of 73 in that city is about 11 years. 491 laps a year, 610 steps, $2 each. $13 million if he lived to 84. He worked out what his friend was worth on a floor at 2 in the morning, and then he was sick in the kitchen sink. He has told exactly one person about that calculation, which is why it is in this account, and it was not Bo, and it was 11 years later. He walked the lap the following night as usual. Bo talked about the bathroom leak again. Noah listened to every word of it this time and asked 4 questions about a bathroom he had never seen. He paid a plumber £800 to fix it the following Tuesday, and told Bo it was covered by the council, and Bo knew perfectly well that it was not, and let it go. By the December, the unit was doing 11 people a night, 5 nights a week, and Noah was clearing about $600,000 a week from a shed with no windows. $29 million by the new year. He had bought 2 houses for other people, paid off 11 strangers' debts, and had not moved out of a 4th-floor flat with stripped floorboards. He was not saving it, and he was not spending it. It was simply arriving, the way weather arrives, and he had stopped having any opinion about it whatsoever. What he did have an opinion about was the streak, which stood at 1,096 days on the 31st of December, and had become the only number that could still frighten him. 1,096 days is 3 years exactly. He had not missed a single one, through a flu that put him in bed, a funeral, and 11 days when the knee would not bend past 40 degrees. A streak is not a payment. The panel did not pay him for it. There was no bonus, no multiplier, no line item. It simply counted, and he could not stop looking at it. The first symptom of the thing that put him in hospital was not pain. It was that, on the 14th of January, he could not make himself stop at 8 in the evening. He had done his 24,000. The unit was locked. There was nothing left to earn that mattered and nobody to earn it with, and he went out to the canal and did 11,000 more. At $1 a step, alone, in January, on a joint he had been told in July had 2 years left in it. He got home at 10 past 4. He did the same thing on the 15th and the 16th, and by the end of January it was simply what he did after the unit closed. 35,000 steps a day. 400% of what a surgeon had told him the joint could take, and the panel recorded every one of them without comment. No limit is enforced by this system. It had said that from the first night. He had read it as permission for 4 years, and it had never been anything except a statement of fact. The system was never the antagonist. It made an offer on a bus at 5:30 in the morning, and it has kept that offer precisely every day since without a single alteration. Everything that went wrong from here was done by a man who could not stop, to a joint that could not last, in a city where it rained, for reasons that had stopped being about money in the second year. He still did the lap at 3. 610 steps at $2 with a man of 73 who had never missed one and never asked him why he was limping. $1,220 out of a day worth $200,000. It was the best value walk he took in 5 years, and he did not work that out until he was on a trolley. That is the 4th year. A shed with 12 treadmills, a constitution with his name on page 9, and a man on a canal towpath at 4 in the morning earning the lowest rate in the system on purpose. By the spring of the 5th year, the Saturday walk was the largest regular gathering in that city that was not a football match, and nobody who ran it was paid. 940 registered, 600 on a wet week, 1,100 on the first Saturday of May, which broke the path and got a complaint from a dog walker. Mira ran the front. She had never been given the job and it had never been discussed, and by that spring she was the only person 1,100 people would actually listen to. Noah walked about 2/3 of the way back with his hood up, and in 1,100 people there were perhaps 12 who knew who he was. 47 people within range. A weighted 13.1, which was as close to the ceiling as he ever got. $14.10 a step. $146,000 for a 2-hour walk in a park on a Saturday morning. And it stopped rising after that no matter how many people came. There is a ceiling. 13.4 is the highest weighting the instrument ever gave him, and it was reached at about 40 people, and 1,100 did not beat 40. A man can only be genuinely with about 40 people at once. That is not a rule the system invented. It simply measured it accurately and refused to be argued with. Caro told him in March that a local paper had been in touch twice and wanted to write about the walk and would like to speak to whoever had started it. Noah said no. Caro said he had already told them no twice and had only mentioned it because a third refusal starts to look like a story on its own. That is the sentence that changed the next 2 months, and Caro delivered it the way he delivered everything, as a fact about the world that he had no personal stake in. They met about it in a cafe on a Wednesday, which is the only time in 5 years Noah agreed to sit down in a room with Caro rather than walk somewhere. Caro's proposal was simple: give them a founder, not Noah. Mira, who actually ran it, who liked people, and who would be extremely good at it. It was the correct answer. It was so obviously the correct answer that Noah spent 4 days looking for what was wrong with it and did not find anything. What was wrong with it was that it meant admitting, out loud, to another person, that he had built the largest walking group in the city and did not want his name on it. Caro did not ask why. In 5 years he asked why perhaps 4 times, and Noah eventually understood that this was not tact. It was that Caro preferred to work it out himself. Mira said yes in 11 seconds and then asked, on the way to the gate, whether Noah minded, and Noah said he did not mind at all, and both of them knew that was not true. The piece ran in April, over 2 pages, with a photograph of Mira at the front of 1,100 people, and it was entirely accurate except in one respect. It said the walk had been started 4 years earlier by a group of neighbors who wanted company. 900 people believed that, and it is very nearly what happened. Membership went to 1,400 inside a month, 2 more routes. A second unit that Noah paid for and never visited. It worked exactly as Caro had said it would. And Noah Pike disappeared out of the front of his own organization in 9 weeks, cleanly, with everybody's agreement, and found that he minded far more than he had expected to. He had never wanted the credit. He is quite clear about that, and it is true. What he had not understood was that credit and belonging arrive in the same envelope. Dev asked him in May, on a treadmill, whether he had known Mira before the walk started, because the article had been a bit vague about the early days. Noah said he had joined in the 2nd year. Dev said that was funny, because the route app had him down as the first registered walker, and had done since he built it. He said it without any suspicion at all. He said it the way you point out a spelling mistake, and then he laughed and said the database was probably just sorted badly. Noah agreed that it probably was. Then he went home at midnight and did not sleep, and at 4 in the morning he did something he is not proud of. He had a login. He had had one since the app was built. He edited his own record, moved his join date forward 18 months, and closed the laptop. It took about 9 seconds. Nobody noticed. Dev never mentioned it again. And it is, by a very long way, the worst thing Noah Pike did in 5 years. Not the money, not the treadmills, not the payroll. 9 seconds spent editing his own history out of a database built for free by a 19-year-old who trusted him. Bo had a heart attack on the 9th of June, at 4:10 in the afternoon, in a supermarket, in front of about 40 people, and survived it because of where he was. Noah found out at 9 that evening from Bo's daughter, who rang him because he was in the phone under one name with no surname, and she had not known who else that was. He was in the unit when the phone went. He walked out of a room with 11 people in it in the middle of a sentence and did not lock the roller shutter behind him. Bo was sitting up. He was 73 in a gown with a line in the back of his hand and his glasses on, and he complained about the pillows before he said hello. Noah stood in the doorway of the bay for about 4 seconds and could not make his face do anything at all, and Bo saw it and told him to sit down and stop looming. He sat down. He sat down for 4 hours in a plastic chair without pacing once, which he had not managed anywhere in 3 years. 31 steps in 4 hours. 9,110 on the day, which was a quarter of his usual, and he did not look at the panel once until 2:30 in the morning. 1,268 days. The streak was safe. He had done 9,000 steps before the phone rang and had not known he was buying himself insurance when he did it. That is the thought he had at 2:30 in the morning beside a friend who had nearly died that afternoon, and he has never been able to unthink it. Mira arrived at 8 the next morning with a bag of things nobody had asked for, saw Noah in the chair, and worked out in about a second and a half that he had not left. She did not say anything about it. She said the pillows were terrible, agreed with Bo about the tea, and went and found a nurse and came back with 2 more blankets. Noah understood, watching her do it, that there was an entire competence he did not have and had never tried to acquire, and that 4 years of walking had not taught him any of it. Bo was in for 9 days. Noah came on all 9. On the 6th, Bo asked him what he actually did for a living, which he had never once asked in 4 years. Noah said investments. Bo said that was what people said when the answer was either boring or illegal, and that he did not mind which, and would like a straight answer before he died. He said it lightly. He had had a heart attack 6 days earlier, and he said it lightly, and that is the closest Bo Alayami ever came to putting pressure on anybody. Noah said he would tell him. Not now. When he was out and well and they were walking, because it was the sort of thing that needed to be said while moving. Bo said fine, and held him to it, and asked again in the September and the November and the following March, and Noah did not tell him for another 2 years. The lap resumed on the 22nd of June, at 3 in the morning, at about half the usual pace, with a man 9 days out of a cardiology ward. Noah walked at that pace without commenting on it, which he had learned from the man he was doing it for, and which he would need again in about 18 months. 612 sessions, waiting 1.00, unbroken, through a heart attack and 9 days in a hospital bed. The instrument does not measure affection. It measures whether somebody chose to be there. In 612 consecutive attempts, one man had chosen it every single time. In July, Caro asked Noah to sign off a second unit on the other side of the city, and Noah signed it without reading it, which he had started doing in about April. That is the habit that ends this story. Not greed, not cruelty, not the treadmills. A man who stopped reading things because reading them took time he wanted to spend walking. By August, Julian Caro held the lease on 2 units, the payroll for 9 people, the bank mandate, the app admin, and the insurance policy on a 1,400-member organization, none of which he had taken, all of which he had been given, correctly in writing, by a man who wanted his evenings back and had nothing else to trade. Noah's own contribution to the organization by the autumn of the 5th year was that he walked up and down an aisle for 4 hours a night and knew everybody's name, which is, if you take the money out of it, exactly what he had wanted at the bus stop, and he was in the middle of it, and it was not touching him at all. In September, the knee stopped straightening fully. Not painfully. It simply stopped about 11 degrees short and stayed there, and he adjusted his walk around it in about 4 days. The adjustment cost him about 4% of his stride, which cost him about 1,100 steps a day, which he made up by walking an extra 20 minutes. That is a man solving the wrong problem with total competence, and he did it 4 separate times over 18 months, and each solution made the next problem worse. Mira asked in October why he had started walking on the grass beside the path, and he said it was softer, which was true, and did not say what it was softer then. She said her father had walked on the grass for 2 years before he had both hips done, and then she changed the subject, and that is the closest anybody got to helping him. Noah heard it. He is quite certain he heard it. He walked another 811 days on that joint after she said it. Dev got a job in November, a real one, 300 miles away, and gave 4 weeks' notice to a walking group that had never employed him. Noah said congratulations, and meant it, and then spent the entire following week trying to work out what a 19-year-old going to a graduate scheme cost him per day. About $11,000 a night. He caught himself doing the sum on the third day and stopped, and caught himself doing it again on the fifth and stopped again. On Dev's last night, the unit was full and somebody had brought a cake, and it was not structurally unsound this time, and about 30 people stayed until 1 in the morning. 2,900 steps because he barely moved. A weighted 12.8 because he barely needed to. $40,000, which was his worst night in 2 years. 5 hours and 40 minutes of sustained proximity, which was the longest the instrument ever recorded, and he got it by standing still in a shed at a leaving party. He did not draw the conclusion. He noted the figure, decided it was an artifact of a crowded room, and was back in the aisle doing 24,000 steps the following night. It took him until a hospital bed, 2 years later, to work out that the highest number the system ever gave him came from an evening where he hardly walked at all. He was 28 in the November. Bo came, and Mira came, and Dev sent a message from 300 miles away, and Caro sent a card that was correctly addressed and entirely blank inside. 4 people. He had 1,800 acquaintances and a 1,400-member organization and 4 people, and he counted them on the estate at 3 in the morning and was not unhappy about it. Bo said that 4 was a good number, and that most men his age had 2, and that one of those was usually a brother they did not like. Then he asked for the 4th time that year what Noah did for a living, and Noah said he would tell him in the spring, and Bo said he had said that in the spring. That is 4 separate refusals over 18 months, to a man who had walked 640 consecutive laps with him, and had never asked for anything else. In December, Caro asked, in the same cafe over the same formica, what the plan was for the following 5 years, and produced a single sheet of paper. 11 units, 4 cities, a staff of 40. It was a good plan, properly costed, and it would have worked, and Noah looked at it for about 9 seconds. He said no. Caro asked why. Noah said because he could only be in one of them, and Caro put the pen down and looked at him properly for the first time in 5 years. It is the single most revealing sentence Noah ever said in front of him. Caro did not react. He folded the sheet, put it in the folder, and asked about the insurance renewal. Noah walked home from that cafe and knew, with complete clarity, that he had told a very clever man that his own presence was the point of the whole operation, and then did nothing about it for 4 months, because doing something about it would have meant explaining it, and explaining it would have meant saying the rule out loud. The 5th year closed at $41 million, 1,400 members, 2 units, 6 routes, and 1 man who had told 4 people the truth about none of it. 8,910,000 steps in a year. A best day of 41,100. 1,461 days without a break. 1,461 days is 4 years exactly. He looked at that line in an empty shed at midnight and felt something that was not pride and was not fear. The best description he has managed since is that it felt like reading a number on a machine he was strapped into. The 41,000-step day was the 14th of December, and it is worth describing properly, because everything after it follows from it. He started at 5:30 in the morning in the park, on his own in the dark, because he had not slept and the alternative was lying still. 9,000 by 8. The Saturday walk from 9 until 11, another 11,000 at $14 a step, which is the best 2 hours he ever recorded. Then the afternoon route with 6 people. Then the unit from 7 until 11. Then, at midnight with 38,000 on the day, he went out to the canal. 3,100 more steps, alone, at $1 each, for no reason he could name then or has been able to name since, to make the number end in a rounder shape. 41,100 steps in 19 hours, $211,000, and a knee that, at about the 36,000 mark, had stopped hurting entirely. That is the part he should have understood. Pain stopping is not pain going away. He noticed it, was pleased about it, and used it as evidence that the physiotherapist had been wrong. He still did the lap at 3. 610 steps at $2, with a man of 74, on the 411th consecutive night of that particular streak. Bo said he was walking wrong, not limping. Wrong. He said it looked like a man carrying something heavy on one side and asked what was in the bag. There was no bag. Noah said there was no bag. Bo said he knew there was no bag, and that was rather the point, and then dropped it and talked about the buses. 3 people had now told him in different words in 11 months that his body was failing. A physiotherapist, a woman whose father had had 2 hips done, and a man of 74 on a footpath. He had heard all 3. He had a functioning brain and $41 million and access to any surgeon in the country, and he did nothing at all for another year. Because stopping would have broken a streak that paid nothing, ended a lap that paid $1,200, and required him to sit in a room with people and not be earning anything. That last one is the real answer, and it took him a joint replacement and 11 weeks flat on his back to admit it to himself. That is the 5th year. $41 million, 1,400 members, a name in a newspaper that was not his, and a man on a footpath being asked what was in the bag. In the January of the 6th year, Noah Pike decided to take 1 day off, as an experiment, to prove to himself that he could. 1 day, not a reduction, not a cap. 1 single day of not walking on a Sunday after 1,511 consecutive days. He got to 10 in the morning. 4 hours and 11 minutes after waking, he put his shoes on and walked 11 miles and got home at 4 in the afternoon. He tried again on the following Sunday and got to 9. He tried on the 3rd Sunday and did not get out of the flat at all until 2, which he counted as a success. He did not manage a full day. Not that January, not that year, not once in 5.5 years, and the only thing that ever stopped him was a surgeon with a saw. 0 steps, 4 hours awake. A streak line that would not have broken until midnight, and he could not make it to lunch. The panel was not applying any pressure. It said the streak was safe until midnight. It has never once told him to go out. The pressure was coming from somewhere else entirely. He worked out where in February, on the canal, at 2 in the morning. And it is the only piece of self-knowledge in this entire account that arrived cleanly and all at once. When he was walking, he was earning. When he was earning, he was doing something. When he stopped, he was a 28-year-old man with $41 million and 4 friends sitting in a flat. The walking had never been about the money. It had been about not having to find out what he was when he was not walking, and it had worked perfectly for 5 years. He stood on a cast-iron footbridge over black water at 2 in the morning, understood that completely, and then walked another 9,000 steps and went to bed. Understanding a thing and being able to stop doing it are 2 different faculties, and there is no rule anywhere in this system that connects them. The 2nd unit closed in March. It had been open 11 months, had never taken more than 5 people a night, and had cost about £140,000. Caro presented the closure as a straightforward failure of demand, which it was. What he also said in 1 sentence at the end was that the 1st unit's numbers were not about location. He said the 1st unit worked because Noah was in it. He said it as an operational observation, in the same tone he used for insurance premiums, and then closed the folder. It was the 2nd time in 4 months that Julian Caro had said out loud that the presence of one specific man was the operative variable, and Noah had confirmed it in a cafe in December. Noah changed the subject to the water cooler contract, and Caro let him, and neither of them referred to it again for 14 months. Bo turned 75 in the April and refused to have a party, and then had one anyway because his daughter organized it and did not ask him. Noah went. He stood in a function room above a pub for 2 hours and 11 minutes, holding a drink he did not want and did not walk once. It cost him about $18,000 in unwalked steps, and it is one of about 6 evenings from 6 years that he can describe without checking anything. Bo introduced him to about 40 people that evening as his friend Noah, with no surname, no explanation, and no context, and every single one of them accepted it immediately. Nobody asked what he did. Nobody asked how they knew each other. Bo's family had apparently known about the 3 o'clock lap for years and had decided collectively not to make anything of it. He walked home at 1 in the morning having been, for 2 hours, simply a man at a party, and the panel paid him $1 a step for the walk back, and he did not mind. Mira came to the unit in May for the 3rd time in 2 years, and this time she did not get on a machine and did not leave. She stood at the end of the aisle for about 40 minutes and watched him walk up and down it, and then she said 1 sentence and went home. She said, "You have built yourself a corridor." Then she said good night pleasantly to about 9 people by name and left. He walked another 19,000 steps that night, up and down, between 2 rows, in a shed with a roller shutter and no windows, because she was obviously and completely correct. Mira Akanjo said 4 things to Noah Pike over 6 years that changed how he understood his own life. and she was never told that any of them had landed. Dev came back in June for a weekend, in an overcoat, with a job and a haircut, and was recognizably the same person and completely different. He was 21. He talked for an hour about a city 300 miles away, a flat share, a woman called Priya, and a piece of software he was not allowed to describe. Noah listened to all of it and asked at the end whether he was happy, which is a question he had never asked another human being in his entire adult life. Dev said mostly, and then said that the walking group had been the only reason he had left his room at 19, and that he was aware that was quite a large thing to say over a cup of tea. Noah said nothing at all for about 6 seconds, which for him was an enormous response, and Dev noticed and did not push it. The Route app was still running. 1,400 people used it every week. Dev had never taken a penny for it and had never asked what happened to the data. Noah had, 18 months earlier, logged into it at 4 in the morning and altered his own join date. And Dev was sitting 3 feet away drinking tea and talking about Priya. He did not tell him. He has still not told him. That is the one thing in this account that is not confessed to anybody at any point, and it is in here because it happened. The knee gave way for the first time on the 11th of July, on the estate, on the second lap, at about 10 past 3 in the morning. Not a fall, a buckle. The joint simply did not take his weight for about a third of a second, and he went down onto the paving on one hand and one knee. Bo was 75 and got him up. That is not a small thing, and Noah did not understand until much later how frightening the 4 seconds before it must have been. He said it was nothing, that it had been a loose paving slab, and pointed at a slab that was not loose. Bo looked at the slab, looked at him, and said nothing whatsoever. They finished the lap. Bo walked on the right-hand side for the rest of it, which he had never done in 6 years, and did it every single night from then on. He never mentioned it. He never offered an arm. He simply moved to the side the leg was on and stayed there for 411 more nights. Noah rang the physiotherapist on the 12th of July, was offered an appointment on the 19th, and canceled it on the 18th because the Saturday walk had 600 people booked. The Saturday walk did not need him. It had 600 people, 4 marshals, a constitution, and a founder in a newspaper who was somebody else. He canceled 4 more appointments between July and November. He is the only person who ever obstructed the treatment of Noah Pike's right knee, and he did it 5 times in one summer. He compensated in the unit by shortening the aisle. He moved his turn 4 meters in from each end, which reduced the load on the turn and cost him about 2,000 steps a night. Nobody noticed. In a room of 11 people on machines facing each other, a man walking a slightly shorter aisle is not a visible event. He also started putting one hand on the rail of a machine as he turned, which he told himself was casual, and which he did about 400 times a night. Julian Caro noticed in about a week. He did not say anything to Noah about it. What he did was start coming to the unit twice a week, in the evening, which he had never done before. He stood at the side with a folder, and watched a room of 11 people and one man walking between them twice a week for 4 months. Noah found it flattering. He thought Caro had finally taken an interest in the thing itself rather than the paperwork, and he was pleased about it for about 14 months. What Caro was doing was counting who came, how often, how long they stayed, where in the room they stood, and in what order the man in the aisle spoke to them. He had no system, no panel, and no information. He had a folder, a pen, and 4 months of Tuesday and Thursday evenings, and it was enough. In September, Noah went to Bo's flat for the 2nd time in 6 years, and this time it was because Bo had asked him to come and had used the word please. He had been told that week that his heart needed a valve replaced, that he was 75, and that the operation carried a risk that the consultant had put at about 1 in 11. Noah said he would pay for it to be done privately, immediately, anywhere in the country, and Bo said he knew that, and that it was not why he had asked him round. He had asked him round because he wanted somebody to know where the will was, where the insurance papers were, and which of his children to ring first, and he had decided it should be Noah. Not one of his 3 children, not his daughter, who rang him twice a week. A man he had met on a footpath at 3 in the morning 6 years earlier and had never asked a single question about. Noah asked why him. Bo said because his children would cry and Noah would do the paperwork, and that at 75 you learn to allocate people to their strengths. It was a joke, and it was not a joke. Noah wrote down 4 addresses, a solicitor's name and a bank, in a notebook in a council flat, with a gas fire on in September. Then Bo asked him for the 9th time in 2 years what he did for a living. And this time he said that he was asking because of the 1 in 11 and that it seemed fair. Noah looked at 41 photographs on a sideboard, and our man who had just made him executor of a life he knew almost nothing about, and he said, "Investments." Bo said all right. He said it kindly. He poured more tea and talked about a bus route that was being canceled and did not ask again for another 8 months. Noah walked the canal for 6 hours after that, 29,000 steps, alone, at $1 a step, from 9:30 at night until 3:30 in the morning. The knee buckled twice on the towpath, and he caught himself on the parapet both times, and kept going, and got home and could not get his shoe off the right foot. The operation was on the 4th of November. It went perfectly. Bo was home in 6 days and back on the lap in 3 weeks at a pace Noah had to work to stay slow for. 1 in 11 is very good odds, and it went the way good odds usually go. And Noah stood in a hospital corridor on the 4th of November and did 4,000 steps in 8 hours. 894 sessions. Still 1.00, still no deviation. Through a heart attack, a valve replacement, and 6 years, one man had never once had an off night. He had made $48 million by then. 600,000 of it had come from that lap over 6 years, which is about 1.25% of the total. 1.25% of the money, and about 90% of everything he would still have if you took the money away. And he could do that sum by then without being sick. In the December, Caro asked Noah in the side office of the unit whether he would consider stepping back from the evenings for 3 months and letting somebody else run the room. He gave 3 reasons, all of them true. The knee, the fact that the organization should not depend on one person, and that Noah had not taken a day off in 1,841 days. Noah asked how he knew that number. Caro said the app logged attendance, that Noah's record was continuous, and that he had noticed it about a year ago and had checked it twice since. 1,841 days. Exactly right. Julian Caro had been reading the streak off a database without a panel for a year. Noah said no to the 3 months. Caro accepted it without argument, the way he had accepted every no in 6 years, and put it in the folder. And Noah went out into the aisle and walked for 4 hours. And the whole time he was walking, he was doing arithmetic about a man who did arithmetic better than he did. That night he asked the panel a question he had asked precisely once before, 4 years earlier, and had not liked the answer to then either. 0.62, rising over 312 sessions. Julian Caro, who was paid, whose company was a professional arrangement, had been drifting upward for 14 straight months. 0.41 for a man on 900 a month who was never going to move. 0.62 and rising for a man on considerably more. Which means that somewhere in those 14 months, Julian Caro had started turning up for reasons that were not entirely the invoice, and the instrument had recorded it before either of them noticed. Noah sat on a floor at 2 in the morning and could not decide whether that made everything better or considerably worse, and he still cannot. The 6th year closed in a shed on an industrial estate with 11 people on machines, and one man walking a 4-meter shorter aisle with his hand on the rails. 7,980,000 steps, down 10.4%, which was the first annual fall since the bus and had nothing to do with anybody's willingness. The decline was mechanical. The joint was giving him fewer steps per hour and would give him fewer again the following year, and the panel reported it without any comment at all. 1,876 days. 5 years and 4 months without a single day off, in a body that had been told at 27 it had 2 years left in it. On the 31st of December, on the estate, at 3 in the morning, Bo said that he had been thinking about what Noah did for a living. He said he had decided it did not matter what it was. He said he had decided that about 4 years ago and had kept asking out of habit and would stop now. Noah stopped walking. In 6 years he had stopped walking on that footpath 4 times, and this was the 4th. Bo said that a man who will not say what he does is usually protecting somebody, and that after 6 years he had concluded it was not him, and that was enough to be going on with. He was wrong. Noah was protecting himself entirely and exclusively, and had been since a bus at 5:30 in the morning 6 years earlier. He said, "I will tell you in the spring." Bo said he had been saying that since the spring before last and started walking again, and that was the end of it. He did tell him in the spring. 4 months later, in April, in a park after a spreadsheet, and it did not go the way he had spent 2 years imagining it would. That is where the 6th year ends. $48 million, 1,876 days. A knee that buckled twice a week and a promise made on a footpath. Everything that was going to go wrong was already in place by the 31st of December, and every single component of it had been put there deliberately by Noah Pike. The unit because he wanted company in winter. The Constitution because it was correct. Caro's access because he wanted his evenings. The knee because he could not take one day off. And the panel which had made an offer on a bus at 5:30 in the morning and had kept it exactly, to the cent, without a single alteration for 2,011 days. He walked the canal on New Year's Eve again, alone at $1 a step, for 4 hours, exactly as he had 3 years earlier. And the only difference was that this time he had been invited to 5 places. Bo's daughters, Mira's, a woman from the Wednesday group, Dev 300 miles away who had said he would pay for the train, and Julian Caro who had asked in a folder in writing as an agenda item. He said yes to all 5 and went to none of them. 22,000 steps, $22,000 on the worst rate in the system on the last night of the 6th year. The instrument had never asked him to do that. It had never asked him to do anything. It had simply made walking pay and left the rest of it entirely up to him. Julian Caro was extremely good at his job, which is the part of this that nobody who hears the story afterwards ever wants to believe. By that 7th spring, the walking group had 2,000 members, 6 routes, a waiting list and a constitution, and none of it cost Noah a single hour of his week. He also, at some point in that 6th year, built a spreadsheet. Noah found it in April, on a shared drive in a folder called Operations, in a file that was not hidden and had never been hidden. It listed every regular walker by name, days attended, average duration, distance, and a 4th column that Caro had labeled with no apparent embarrassment value. The numbers in it were not money. They were a ranking 1 to 5 of how reliably each person turned up. It was an entirely reasonable thing for an operations manager to build. And it was, line for line, within about 4%, the same ranking the panel had been giving him for 2 years. A man with no system, no panel and no information had reproduced it in 14 months with a folder, a pen and a register, which meant the panel had never been telling him anything a sufficiently observant person could not work out. It had only ever been telling him faster. He sat with that for about 11 minutes, and then he scrolled to the bottom of the spreadsheet where there was a second tab. The second tab was called Pike. It had 1 row on it and 11 columns, and it went back to the 3rd Sunday in February of the previous year. Distance walked, companions present, days missed, which groups, which weather, what he did on days he was alone, all of it observed, none of it guessed, and every entry correct. The first entry was dated 11 days before Caro first appeared on the towpath. He had not found Noah at a walking group. He had found him somewhere else and then arranged to be at the walking group. Noah did not close the laptop, delete anything, or call anybody. He sat in a chair in a flat that had become an office and worked out what it would look like if he were wrong. Because there was a version where a logistics man who had sold a company had simply noticed a young man walking 20 miles a day and found it interesting enough to look into. That version was entirely consistent with everything Caro had ever said or done, and it was also exactly what the other version would look like from the inside. So he did the only sensible thing, which was to walk round a housing estate at 3 in the morning and describe the entire situation to a 73-year-old. He told him almost all of it. He did not say the word panel. He said he had a way of knowing things about people and that a man had built the same thing out of a register. Bo walked most of a lap without saying anything, which by then Noah had learned to recognize as thinking rather than disapproval. Then he asked whether the man had ever done anything with the information, or whether he had only collected it. Noah said he had only collected it. Bo said that in his experience a man who collects and never uses is either building a case or waiting for a price, and that Noah should find out which. Then he stopped walking, which he never did, and asked Noah what the way of knowing things actually was. Noah Pike stood on a footpath at 3 in the morning and told somebody the truth for the first time in 2 years and 4 months. It took 9 minutes. Bo listened to all of it without once looking away, and at the end he asked exactly one question. He asked what his number was, and Noah, who had never once checked, and who had been proud of never checking, discovered that not knowing was not the same as not having been able to. He said he did not know. He said he had never looked. Bo asked whether he could look now, and Noah said yes, and Bo said then look. Maximum waiting, 419 days. The highest number the panel had ever shown him, and it belonged to a man who had never taken a penny. Noah read it out. Bo listened to the whole thing, nodded once, and said that seemed about right, and started walking again. That is the whole of Bo's reaction to being told he was the most valuable thing in another man's life. He said it seemed about right, and carried on walking. On the next lap he said one more thing, which was that Noah should stop treating the number as a compliment. He said a number that high only means one thing, which is that Noah had nobody else, and that a man ought to be embarrassed rather than moved by it. Noah confronted Julian Caro on a Saturday morning in a park, in front of 900 people, which is the least private place in the city and was therefore the correct choice. He said he had read both tabs. He did not accuse him of anything. He asked him one question, which was when he had started. Caro did not pause, deny, or apologize. He said the 14th of January, and he said it as though relieved to be asked. He said he had noticed a man on a treadmill in a basement gym at 4 in the morning on the 14th of January, through a window, walking with a limp that should not have permitted it. Noah had walked past that window every night for a year, and had never once wondered who might be on the other side of it. He said he had watched for 4 months because he was bored and because it did not make sense, and that he had never once worked out what the answer was. Then he said the thing that Noah had been braced against for 4 months, and which did not arrive in the shape he had prepared for. He said he did not want to know what it was. He said he had spent 19 years around men who found an edge and were destroyed by being asked to explain it. He said he had built the spreadsheet because building things is what he does when he cannot sleep, that he had never shown it to anybody, and that he would delete it if Noah asked. Noah asked him what he did want, and Caro said he wanted to run something that mattered, and that he had not had that since he sold the company. Every word of it was true. Noah checked afterwards in every way available to him, and every word of it was true. He looked finally at Caro's number, 0.94, the second highest he had ever seen, which settled nothing at all, because the panel measures whether somebody wants to be there, and a man who is working you wants to be there more than anybody. So he did the thing he should have done 11 months earlier, which was to decide without an instrument, using nothing but his own judgment, like everybody else has to. He told Caro to keep the spreadsheet and to keep running the group and never to open the second tab again. Caro said that was fair, and it was never mentioned by either of them again. Bo went into hospital on the 9th of June with a chest infection, which at 73 is not a small thing, and Noah found out within 4 hours because he had a phone number and a daughter's name. He went every day for 11 days. He sat in a plastic chair and earned nothing at all for between 2 and 4 hours every single day. The streak broke on the 3rd day. He noticed at about 11 at night and felt nothing about it, which is the single largest thing that happens to Noah Pike in this entire story. 563 consecutive days, gone, and a rate that had taken 19 months to build back to $1. He read the line, put his phone away, and asked a man in a hospital bed whether he wanted the window open. Bo was discharged on the 20th. His daughter drove him home. Noah met them at the block and carried a bag up 4 flights because the lift was out, which took him 11 minutes and hurt considerably. They did not walk for 6 weeks. Noah came round instead, 3 evenings a week, and they watched football he did not care about and argued about it. He earned about $40 an evening, walking to the kitchen. It is the least profitable period of his adult life, and he has never once described it that way. In August they started again, 1 slow lap, and Bo was noticeably slower than he had been in June, and both of them noticed, and neither of them said so. By September it was 2 laps. By October it was 4, and Bo was talking about a canal boat again. And the rate, over those 4 months, climbed back from $1 to $3.80, because Noah walked every day with people who were there because they wanted to be. Not because he had optimized anything. Because he had spent 11 weeks in a hospital chair and 6 weeks in an armchair, and had come out of it with a life that happened to score well. He was 27 that November. 6 people came. It was the first birthday of his adult life that anybody had marked, and he spent most of it standing up because he could not help himself. $41 million, 411 people on a Saturday morning, and 6 chairs. That is the top of the curve. Everything after this is Noah Pike finding out what it costs to have got there on a joint that was already finished when he started. It went in December. On a wet Tuesday, on the estate, on the 3rd lap, on a level piece of paving with nothing wrong with it. There was no impact and no twist. The leg simply stopped taking his weight halfway through a step, the way a chair leg goes, and he was on the ground before he understood he was falling. He lay on the paving in the rain for about 90 seconds working out whether he could stand, and established fairly quickly that he could not. He had a phone, $41 million, and 900 people who walked with him every Saturday, and he lay on a footpath in the rain at 3 in the morning. He rang Bo, because Bo was 400 meters away and would be awake, and it did not occur to him until much later that he had rung the 73-year-old first. Bo came in 11 minutes in a coat over pajamas, did not attempt to lift him, put his own umbrella over Noah's head, and sat down on the wet paving beside him to wait for the ambulance. They were there for 40 minutes. Bo talked the entire time about a boat he had not bought in 1984, and Noah has never been able to remember a single detail of it. The ambulance took him at 4:10. The panel had recorded 11,200 steps that day at $3.80, and neither number has ever meant anything to him since. The joint had not broken. That is the first thing the surgeon said, and it was not good news. A break heals. What had happened was that the surface of the joint had finally given out under an ordinary step, and there is no procedure for putting that back. They gave him a date in March for a full replacement, which was 11 weeks away, and told him not to wait the leg at all until then. 11 weeks of not waiting the leg means 11 weeks of not walking, which meant, in the only unit Noah Pike had used for 2.5 years, 11 weeks of nothing. 4 days, 0 steps, a rate of $1 and a balance that had not moved by a cent since the paving. He had spent 2.5 years terrified of exactly this, and it arrived, and he found, lying in a bay with 3 other men, that he was mostly just tired. Bo came at 2 on the first afternoon with a bag of grapes he had plainly bought at the hospital shop, and complained about the price of for 11 minutes. Mira came at 6, straight from work, and Dev came with her, and neither of them had been told to. Caro came the following morning with a laptop, a folder, and 9 questions about the walking group that Noah could answer lying down. It took Noah until the 4th day to understand that this was Caro being kind, and that giving a man in a hospital bed something to decide is worth considerably more than grapes. Somebody came every single day for 9 days. On the 7th, 2 of the retired women from the Wednesday group turned up and told him off about the state of the hospital tea. 2.5 years earlier, he had lain on the floor of a bedsit for 19 hours with a knee the size of a football, and nobody had known he was there. They sent him home on crutches on the 10th day with a brace, a leaflet, and instructions to do nothing whatsoever for 11 weeks. 11 weeks is 77 days. At his old rate, that is about $3.5 million, and he worked that figure out on the 2nd afternoon and then made himself stop. The interesting thing about not being able to walk, when walking is the only thing you have done for 2.5 years, is how much time it turns out to have been taking. He had 8 hours a day back, and no idea what anybody did with them. Caro came every Tuesday and Friday and put a laptop on his lap and made him run the walking group from a sofa, and did not once offer to do it himself. It was 900 people, 4 routes, 11 volunteers, an insurance renewal, and a dispute with a council parks officer, and it took about 4 hours a week, which left him about 36 hours a week of doing nothing at all, and it was in the 4th of those weeks that he opened the panel and asked it a question he had never asked. 9,140,000 steps, 912 days, 1,880 distinct people. 1,880 people had walked next to him. He could name about 40 and would recognize perhaps 200, and every single one of them had shown up on purpose. It had always been available. He had spent 2.5 years asking that instrument what people were worth, and had never once asked it how many there had been. The replacement went in on the 4th of March and took 2 hours and 11 minutes, and afterwards, a physiotherapist told him to stand up on it the following morning. He got 4 steps between the parallel bars on the first day and had to sit down and put his head between his knees afterwards. 4 steps, $4. It is the smallest figure the panel had shown him since the bus, and he sat on a plinth in a hospital gym and laughed until the physiotherapist asked if he was all right. 11 steps on the 2nd day, 30 on the 4th, 110 by the end of the first week, all of them between 2 bars in a room with a mirror. Bo came to 2 of the sessions and sat in a plastic chair at the end of the room, and gave commentary that the physiotherapist eventually asked him to stop giving. He came home in the middle of March with a stick, a scar the length of his hand, and a joint that did not hurt, which he had forgotten was a thing a knee could do. The surgeon had told him the replacement would last about 20 years if he was sensible, and about 8 if he was not, and had looked at him for a long time while saying it. 20 years at 5,000 steps a day, or 8 years at 20,000. He did that sum once in his head, standing in a kitchen, and never wrote it down. The first walk was on the 29th of March at 3 in the morning on the estate, and it was 140 meters and took 9 minutes. Bo walked at exactly that pace without commenting on it, which is the single kindest thing anybody does in this entire story, and he did it every night for 5 months. 196 steps, $392. The rate doubled the moment somebody fell into step, exactly as it had on a wet footpath 2.5 years earlier. Nothing about the rule had changed. Nothing about it was ever going to change. It had been the same on the first night, and it was the same now, and it would be the same in 30 years. 200 meters in April, 400 in May. By June, it was a full lap, and Bo had started swinging his arms again. By August, the stick was in a cupboard, and Noah was doing 4,000 steps a day, and had turned down every single request to increase it. Caro asked him in September what the ceiling was, and Noah said 4,000, and Caro asked whether that was medical advice or a decision. Noah said it was a decision. He said the medical advice was 5,000, and he had taken 1,000 off it on purpose, because he intended to be walking when he was 60. 4,000 steps a day, at $4 a step with company, is about $16,000 a day and roughly $6 million a year, which is 1/12 of what he had been making at the peak, and he made that trade without hesitating, and it is the only entirely uncomplicated decision in this story. He gave the rest of it away over the following 2 years, mostly badly, mostly to the wrong things, and learned that giving away money competently is considerably harder than earning it by accident. Caro ran the giving in the end, because Caro ran everything in the end, and did it with the same spreadsheets and the same total absence of sentiment. Noah never did find out whether Julian Caro had been working him or had simply been bored and curious, and after about the 4th year he stopped considering it an open question. Bo Elayemi died in the November of the following year, at 75, at home, in the afternoon, which is about as well as anybody manages it. His daughter rang Noah before she rang most of the family, because he was in the phone under one name with no surname, and she had worked out by then who he was. Noah walked the estate that night on his own, 4 laps at $1 a step, and it was the first time since the paving that the rate had meant anything to him at all. Because $1 a step is what it costs to walk somewhere alone, and he had not paid that price in 4 years, and he had entirely forgotten what it was. 211 people came to the funeral. Noah had expected about 9. 40 of them were from the Saturday walk. None of them had known that Bo knew Noah, and none of them had known that Noah had anything to do with the walk. He had spent 4 years keeping those two facts apart, and standing in that car park he could not for the life of him remember why. The panel did not mark it. It reduced his companion waiting by 1 entry the following night, and carried on exactly as before, which is the only genuinely cruel thing it ever did. 1 companion record closed. That is the whole of the obituary the system gave a man who had walked 419 nights beside him for nothing. Noah kept walking the estate at 3 in the morning for another 11 years, which is considerably longer than he needed to, and was never once about the money. Other people started turning up. A woman who worked nights at a bakery, a man with a new baby, 2 students, then 4, then a dozen, none of whom were ever paid a penny. It has a name now, which Noah did not choose and does not use. It meets at 3 in the morning, 7 nights a week, and nobody who goes to it knows why it started. Noah Pike is 39 now. He walks about 4,000 steps a day. The joint has 11 years left on it, and he intends to spend every one of them. He has never told anybody except Bo what the panel is, and Bo is dead. So as far as the world is concerned, there is simply a man who walks a lot and gives money away. The thing he wants recorded, if anybody ever asks, is that the system paid him $1 for every step he took and doubled it whenever somebody chose to walk beside him. It never once paid him for having friends. It paid him for being with them, which is a different thing, and it took him about 4 years and a joint replacement to notice the difference. One step, $1. Two, if you are not alone. It is not complicated, which is still, after 15 years, the most frightening part of it.